Welcome back to Stinging Back, where we uncover the truth behind online sting operations and the corruption that fuels them. I'm A.
And I'm M. Today's episode is one of the few that gives us some hope because we're focusing on the cases that were actually won or dismissed. Yes, it does happen. And when it does, it's almost always because the truth broke through the fog of deception.
Let's start with the case of Jace Hambrick, a 20-year-old young man from Washington State who was wrongfully targeted in a sting operation. Actually, I believed he lived in Oregon, but he was probably on the border of Oregon and Washington. So he was targeted in a Washington State sting operation. He ultimately won his case, and the reason why is incredibly telling.
Yeah, because once the full facts came out, it was clear this was not about protecting kids. It was about creating arrest numbers. The so-called minor in the case had actually initiated and pushed for the sexual conversation, and there was no credible evidence that Hambrick intended to exploit anyone. The prosecution's case fell apart under scrutiny.
This all happened back in 2017, and the sting was conducted on Craigslist in the casual encounter section, a space well known at the time for being a forum where consenting adults sought casual sex, not friendship, and certainly not minors.
Luckily for Jace, there were two jurors who were familiar with the particular section of Craigslist they were using and the nature of that specific forum. When the defense pointed out that the ad placed in the casual encounter section was clearly to solicit men for casual sex, the police officer falsely claimed that ads in that section could also be for just making friends.
But the jury wasn't buying it. Craigslist had entire other categories specifically for people seeking non-sexual connections. There was the section that was called rants and raves. Then there was one that was called strictly platonic. And there was another one called romance and dating. And there was also one called missed connections. So there was no legitimate reason to place an ad in the casual encounter section unless the purpose was sexual.
And that ad even specified women for male, W4M, which made the sexual nature of the post undeniably clear. There was no ambiguity, no plausible claim that this was an innocent ad misunderstood by Hambrick.
Which made it obvious to the jury that law enforcement had created a sexually charged scenario to entice adult men, and then try to claim it was a child protection operation. In reality, it was a clear case of entrapment at the very least, and at most, a fabricated case designed to inflate ICAC stats.
And because Jace doubted the age claim, and because the decoy used adult photos and presented themselves as an adult, the jury concluded that he didn't believe it was a real 13-year-old, and they found him not guilty.
Yes, and I do need to point out that this was Jace's second trial. His first trial was a bench trial, and he never agreed to a bench trial. That was something that his lawyer just signed off on. And his mother, Kathleen, Lady Justice, she spoke about that when we did an interview with her in one of our other episodes. And so, because of that technicality, Jace was able to get a second trial, and he was lucky to have jurors in his jury that were familiar with Craigslist casual encounters, so they recognized the police officer was being deceptive. They knew that they had placed an ad to solicit adult men for sex, and it was believable that Jace did not truly believe that this was a real 13-year-old, because it would have to be a 13-year-old who had placed an ad to solicit men to meet for casual sex. And so he was found not guilty. Not only did they find that it wasn't entrapment, because it was totally believable that he did not believe or that he doubted that this was truly a 13-year-old. It just was not something any 13-year-old would do. And
you could catch a lot of the trial on Lady Justice Myth's blog. There's links through her Narsal lecture and YouTube videos to see a lot of the case.
yes, you can also Google the name Jace Hambrick and find articles about that as well.
Now, also another major lawsuit we want to talk about, highlighted in an article titled State Operation to Catch Sex Offenders Entrapped Innocent Men to Boost Arrest Numbers.
That lawsuit centered on the case of Quentin Parker, a 32-year-old active soldier stationed at Joint Base Lewis McChord, who was arrested in 2019 during Washington State Patrol's Operation Net Nanny Sting. The complaint accuses detectives, backed by nonprofit funding, of posing as women and girls on social media to entrap men, inflating arrest numbers, and attracting donations to their task force.
The sting used a decoy under the name Rowdy Rhonda 720 on the app Scout, describing herself in fetish terms DDLG, incest, young taboo. Parker testified he showed up expecting an adult role play scenario. Yet upon arrival, he was greeted by a SWAT team, arrested, and accused of attempted rape of a child, despite there being no real minor involved.
The lawsuit alleges that detectives knew the decoy persona referenced adult consent-based fetish roleplay, like DDLG, but filed charges anyway, leveraging this manufactured case to claim they were protecting children.
When Parker's charges were later dropped, the task force continued promoting him as a dangerous predator, even though he'd never met a minor. Critics say these tactics are designed to generate publicity, funding, and power, not to protect real children.
So again, sting operations aren't neutral tools for safety. They're often manufactured crimes created to boost arrest statistics, secure grants and donations, and line pockets with headlines. The organization that Parker ended up suing for putting out there that he was a dangerous child predator was Operation Underground Railroad, because they were promoting him as a dangerous child predator and soliciting donations from donors to supposedly save and protect children from, so-called dangerous child predators, such as this man who was clearly not that.
Yeah, Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad. Those are names you should Google.
Tim Ballard himself has a lot of accusations against him, sexual abuse. So far, they have been all adult women, but I do believe there have been some accusations that are not fully out there yet about minors as well. I don't know if he directly did this to minors himself or he knew about others doing this to minors and has helped cover those up. I have not gone back and looked up more of that, but I do know there have been accusations of sexual abuse of children in orphanages that were in Haiti, which is where Tim Ballard was working to supposedly save and rescue children from sexual abuse. Apparently, there was sexual abuse that they were covering up or doing nothing about. Next up is a guy named Jeff, also in Washington State, and the sting operation he was trapped in happened in 2017, and his case dragged on for 5 years before finally being dropped.
And why? Because they didn't even have the right evidence. Prosecutors were trying to pin a conversation on Jeff that wasn't even his. It belonged to another man entirely. The real chat logs weren't even in the case file.
That didn't stop them from trying to bully him into a plea deal, though. Think about that. 5 years of someone's life wasted over a mistake the prosecution refused to correct. They're so used to bullying these men into accepting a plea deal that they're that shameless that they will continue to prosecute someone for that long, for years, knowing they don't have the evidence because they're so arrogant and so confident that they really believe they can bully all of these men to just accept a plea deal and send them to
Well,
prison.
some of it's the coercion. Hey, if you don't take a plea deal and admit your guilt, this is going to carry on for 8 years.
If you go to trial, it's going to get a lot worse and you're going to end up serving more time.
Yeah, so, so the coercion, yeah, just take a plea deal and it'll all be over faster.
Yeah, they tormented this man for 5 years and good for him. He didn't give in and he didn't give up. And in the end, they didn't have anything to prosecute him with, and they had to drop it. And they kept also, I think this is one of those cases too, where they kind of seal it off so that other attorneys that are fighting these cases don't have access to that information, because they don't want them to know about how this happens, and to see that they don't always have the evidence they need to prosecute these men, and so they don't want other attorneys to win these cases or to file for dismissal.
Right. They don't want an attorney to learn how to reverse these the misconduct and the tactics that they use.
Yes, they desperately need the wins, so they'll hide everything and anything they can to try to keep others from finding out how to win these cases or how to get them dismissed.
Now, there's also Bruce, whose case was dismissed due to missing exculpatory evidence. Police conveniently lost a 6-minute phone call between Bruce and the supposed minor, a call that could have cleared him.
And let's not forget, this minor was actually an adult female decoy, and the call was crucial to prove who she was and what she said. Without it, the case fell apart.
We've talked about the loss of the exculpatory evidence several times in our other episodes. They will claim malfunctioned video, malfunctioned recordings. Oh, when we tried to transfer the data, there was an error. It's all, we hear it all the time. We see it all the time.
Yes, remember, we've said it over and over again. These cases can only be won or are only won because they hide exculpatory evidence. They misrepresent the facts, they hide exculpatory evidence, and basically they cannot win these cases without lying and cheating. But now that we know more about this and we are educating people about this, and some of these guys are using this information, it is really helping a lot of them.
Yeah, and it's a pattern. The law enforcement and the vigilante groups like Rue Powell's SOSA or Chris Hansen frequently withhold the evidence, especially of the video chats.
Yes, Chris Hansen has actually been arrested before for not showing up in court after he was ordered to turn over the unedited video version of the sting operation, and he was refusing to do that, and he failed to show up in court on the day that he was required to provide it, and he was arrested for that. And that was, I believe, in 2021, and now there's a current case in Florida that he did, the sting operation with Shady Grady and Shady Grady's people in what county is that he's in? Polk
Yeah,
County.
Florida, I can't think of the name.
Polk County. And and same thing, video evidence of the video chat is missing. They just don't have it because either they lost it or, it malfunctioned at the time they were recording it, or they just didn't record it because they didn't think it was necessary. And of course, they don't want to provide video evidence of that because they showed the man an adult woman. And that works against the state's case, to prove that this man supposedly knew this was a 14-year-old child who was soliciting him for sex.
Right. Yeah, we constantly track multiple open cases where key evidence is missing, even though it's the government's responsibility to preserve all of this.
Well, and like Lady Justice pointed out to us once as well, There is absolutely no excuse for them to have missing evidence because these are proactive sting operations. They are not reactive sting operations. So they plan everything ahead of time. And so, I mean, everything, because the plan was there in place before, they're supposed to be prepared to, you know, gather the information and to preserve it. So when they're, and we see the pattern in a lot of these cases, there is missing evidence that shows us that this is very intentional. It's not
Well,
that they were just careless.
in the ICAC, you know, mission statements, it says that a lot of that funding is supposed to go towards uh, material to be able to preserve. You know, the computer programs, the computer materials, the laptops, the tab, you know, everything that these officers use is getting funded by us, the taxpayer, through ICAC, but they don't purchase these things. They use their own cell phones, they use their own tablets, and then they blame, you know, errors on the downloads and faulty cameras. But all of this stuff is funded by ICAC, allegedly, according
Yes,
to the mission statements.
yes. And sadly, some judges allow prosecutors to move forward with this without this crucial evidence, completely undermining the defendant's ability to prove entrapment. And it's happened over and over again.
Right, let's talk about what's required to prove entrapment. You must show, number one, the government induced the crime and the defendant was not predisposed to commit it.
That's harder than it should be because courts often ignore or excuse the outrageous conduct of law enforcement or vigilantes who set these traps. They ignore the fact that the decoys solicited the men to engage in sexual conversations and to invite to meet for a casual sexual hookup. And they only claim to be underage after it was established that the conversation would be about that.
One strong defense strategy that needs to be used more often is showing the jury the actual websites where these stings happen. Now, a little backtrack on that, you would need to get in the discovery what they posted on these websites, what they posted in these dating apps, so that you can show how these dating apps are used, like Skip the Game, Scout, Whisper, and other adult escort platforms.
Right. I think it's important that the defense attorneys, pull up these websites and show the judge and show the juries, walk them through what it takes to create a profile or an account on the website that the sting operation was conducted on, show them or what it takes to post an ad and create one as you're walking the jury through it to show them and then show them the content that is on this website that, the police were supposedly saving and protecting children, from predators from. And because those juries need to see what's on there. So when juries see the explicit adult content, the sexual language, and the adult profiles on these sites, it would become crystal clear that these men were in a space designed for consensual adult hookups.
Yeah, and when decoys present themselves as 18 or older in the initial push for sex, and then suddenly flip and say, I'm 14, is that okay? That is not a man seeking a minor. That is a man being set up.
That's right. And there are even more cases where ads or profiles were switched out or the age was changed after the man responded, or the chat logs were altered or redacted. And then there are the ones where the video and call recordings are lost or they just were never made. And forensic timelines were manipulated.
In one case, law enforcement posed as a 51-year-old woman, then changed the story mid conversation to say she was underage, after the man was already engaged in adult conversation.
And that's not criminal intent. That's a bait and switch designed to trap someone who was never a threat. And this case happened on the adult dating app called Badoo, Badoo, and they require photo verification. It has to be, they verify their identity. It has to be tied to an email or phone number or linked to Facebook. And so law enforcement really goes out of their way to really fool these men to make them believe from the beginning that, this is going to be about hooking up with an adult. And only after they establish that this conversation is going to be about an adult, sexual hookup, that's then when they bring in, the minor age. Oh, by the way, I'm 13 or I'm 14, and I hope you're okay with it. And on our next episode, Em and I are actually going to read through the chat log of this specific case where they posed as a 51-year-old woman to lure in a 52-year-old man. And you will be horrified at what how do I say it? The
Yeah,
length,
you
the
don't need to read between the lines in this script. It's all very obvious when you hear how this conversation happened.
you will be horrified to see how far they take it, the lengths they go to entrap these men. And, if the jury were to be shown the content of what's on this website and then show them the conversation, I mean, it'll blow your mind what, this is how you will be able to clearly see how law enforcement has been sexualizing children and, using this to promote and encourage the very abuse that they're falsely claiming to be trying to prevent.
Yeah, the real threat to children isn't being stopped. These operations distract from real exploitation cases, and in the process, they sexualize kids, manipulate adults, and destroy lives.
We'll keep exposing the lies and bringing you the truth because until there's accountability, there will be more wrongful convictions and more families shattered for no reason.
Now, if you or someone you know is facing charges like these, get educated. Demand full discovery. Ask for the full chat logs, the full video, and make sure the jury sees the full truth.
And remember, real justice never starts with a lie.
Now, we promised a couple episodes ago that A would go over more of her conversation with Rue Powell. Do you want to do that now?
Oh, sure. Let me pull that up. Remember, in not the last episode, because that one was an interview with Norm, but the one before that. So 2 weeks ago, I read an email exchange that I had with Rue Powell, who is a vigilante who works with law enforcement to supposedly, save and protect children. I believe they claim they're protecting children from sex trafficking, although they've never shown that they have rescued any. And remember, I read the email where she basically accused me of defaming her if I said publicly that she was promoting and encouraging the sexual abuse of children. Remember the last part, it said, I told her you sexualize children and use your wild fantasies about children to promote and encourage the sexual abuse of children for money and for your own sick thrills. And then she had responded. She said, that last sentence from your previous email um, starts to infringe upon my right. If you're making libelous claims about me publicly, disagreeing with what I do is one thing. Claiming that I promote and encourage the sexual abuse of children is not a protected opinion. It is false, defamatory, and legally actionable. And then she said that she won't be going back and forth with me anymore by email and for me to feel free to have the last word. And so I responded. I said, well, the video we have shows on court records that it's the phone number you've used. I tried to add it here, but the file is too big to attach. And then it turns out that the file did attach, so she did get it and she did see it. And then I say, and yes, if you are soliciting men or those who pose as adult men for sex, and then telling them to engage in sexual behavior with children instead of with an adult, like those men were clearly looking for, then you are sexualizing children and promoting and encouraging the sexual abuse of children. Your behavior very clearly shows this and can easily be proven. You are using sex to lure men as an adult and then encouraging them to engage in sexual behavior with minors. There's no doubt or question about that. It is a fact that you are promoting and encouraging the sexual abuse of children. The images you use to lure the men and the conversations you try to force clearly shows this. And I did send a video that did show an ad that she posted, and the ad that she posted, she was not nude in that picture, but the ad is surrounded by other nude women in it. So anyway, my next email to her says, so you get men aroused by presenting adult sexual photos and talk to them about sex, and then you introduce an imaginary minor into that situation because you clearly want them to think about a minor in that way. You are desperately trying to create what you falsely claim to be trying to protect children from. You are the sickos who are obsessed with the idea of sex with children. You've created wild fantasies that sexualize children, and you use those wild fantasies you have about children to desperately try to make men think about minors in that way too. That's promoting and encouraging the sexual abuse of children. It's not what they wanted, it's what you want. You forced that on them. Of course, any normal person would want to find out what the heck this is all about. Nobody has ever seen anything like that before. Who the heck does that? Oh, I want to have sex with you, and I need you to know that I'm a minor who is desperate for sex with you. That's the behavior of a sexually mature and experienced man who uses the internet to seek out casual encounters. It's not even the behavior of most women, much less any minor. These are scenarios that were clearly created by sexually mature and experienced adult men who project their own fantasies about this onto imaginary minors they imagined being this way. It's clearly promoting and encouraging the sexual abuse of children for money and to meet the sick thrills of truly sick people. It has absolutely nothing to do with trying to save or protect kids from any real risk or real abuse. And we can prove this. But you just keep defending the disgusting stuff you're doing. It shows who you really are. And she responded, and she says, again, and I can only explain this to you. I cannot understand it for you. Not our ad. So I responded, and I said, yeah, sure. The evidence shows that's the phone number you use to entrap men with ads like that. And that's you in some of those pictures in the sports bra and sweatpants. You're even using those pictures as evidence to prosecute men you wrongfully entrapped. You just don't show the entire evidence. That phone number is also tied to cases that are currently being prosecuted. And what about the other video evidence that shows you communicating with them from that phone number? Are you denying that's what the ads you use to lure men look like? Anybody can go to those websites and see that's exactly what those ads on those sites look like. And that's exactly what the judges and jurors need to be shown, as well as your donors. You haven't denied posting ads on adult escort websites. Are you now going to start lying about what websites you placed your ads on and what those ads look like? All anybody has to do is open up those websites and see what is on them. Anybody that sees that can clearly see that you are promoting and encouraging the sexual abuse of children by using images like that on websites like that, and then strongly pushing for sexual conversation on anybody who claims to be an adult man. And then you introduce minors into those adult content situations for whatever sick, twisted reason you guys do that for. Oh, yeah, it's for money and egos. That's the part you guys have been hiding from the public and the courts. That will no longer be hidden. There's plenty of more evidence to show that you have reason to deny you are using adult sexual images to lure men and then encourage them to engage in sexual activity with minors. I'd be embarrassed too. But maybe the real predators have you fooled too. Maybe you're just guilty of allowing yourself to be used in this way to help the real predators meet their own sick thrills by using this in this way. That could very well be it, but you're still responsible for your part. And the fact that you keep defending it, denying it, and protecting that, and even continuing to do it says a lot about you. And that was the end of that conversation. She never responded back. And as you can see, I said a lot. And I mean, there's that pretty much explains it all and says it all. I don't know what she would have to say about that. And I'm not sure, you know, if she would want to discuss that in court. She made that threat, but who knows? We'll see.
Right. Well, share the link to this episode of Stinging Back with her.
Yes, I will definitely do that. And that is a wrap for today. Thank you for listening. And remember, next episode, we will be reading the script, the chat log to an actual case. And it is a case that was dismissed.
Now, for more info, remember ladyjusticemyth.blog, Uncage Us on Facebook, that's UNCAGEUS, our friend Norm at ICAC Unpacked, and there's also a new one getting a lot of putting a lot of great stuff out there. Caught in the web on Substack.
And don't forget also Just Played, Jest Played on YouTube.
Yeah, I look forward to more from him. All right, thanks, A. I'll talk to you again here shortly.
Thank you, Em. And don't forget to share this episode because someone out there might be next and they need to know why they're not alone. Until next time, keep stinging back.